so hard to listen, hard for me to use my hands, and all around the cold is glistening, making sure it keeps me down to sight. And I don't want to know about evil, only want to know about love. I don't want to know one thing about evil, only want to know about love. I'm waiting for the planes to tumble, waiting for the towns to fall. I'm waiting for the cities to crumble, waiting till I see you grow. Isn't getting hard to listen, hard for us to use our eyes, 'cause all around the gold is glistening, making sure it keeps us hypnotized. And I don't want to know about evil, I only want to know about love. I don't want to know about evil, only want to know about love. I don't want to know anything about evil, only want to know about love. I don't want to know about evil, only want to know about love. I don't want to know about evil, only want to know about love. I don't want to know anything about
Thank you so much for being here today to celebrate Fiona. We had a reading with her in 2023. Several of you were here then and part of that beautiful event, and some of you were not, so Fiona's work will be new to you, but we're really glad that you're here. It's not only a celebration of Fiona, but it's a celebration of life, of living, of continuing on, and the presence that poetry creates for us. I want to welcome you to the Telescope Studio. I want to begin with a very huge thanks to Chloe and Andrew Sapienza for their generosity and care in providing a beautiful space for our tribute to Fiona today. Yay! Here we are in the heart of downtown LA. Fiona loved this space. So the universe has conspired a little bit to throw a little wrench in the works. Our lovely, beloved Elena will not be here today. Elena Karina Byrne, for those listening across the ocean. They know that she was a dear friend of Fiona Bennett's, and she's ill today. She feels sorry that she couldn't make it, but of course she's here with us in spirit, and I'm sure, hopefully, she's watching us too. Also, Andrea Witzke Slot. She, unfortunately, her dad is in ICU, so she could not make this reading as well, which is why Carpe Diem, and I do believe that we have to seize the day when we can, and I know that Fiona would be very happy that we're here for her and celebrating not only her, but everyone. We do have a video recording from Andrea, which we'll show you in a little bit. She managed to do that, which is wonderful. So I'm going to just read a little bit here because I don't want to do too much off the cuff. It's important to me to say what I want to say about Fiona. So this tribute is somewhat in the spirit, as I said, of our 2023 gathering with our invited feature and a reading of one poem each by guest poets. It'll be separated into two parts, the first being poems written by Fiona and read by others, and the second, poems reflecting the spirit of the tribute and the invitation to the local community we know Fiona would have appreciated to be a part of the celebration of poetry and the arts. Leonard Cohen said, "The older you get, the deeper the love you need. And how much love, and how deep, and who can give it?" It is remarkable how relatively short Fiona's visit was in relation to the number and depth of friendships she made. The more time passes, the more I understand that Fiona's connections were never the same person to person because she had a diverse set of talents and interests, and her perception was like a tuning fork that understood the energy of who was in front of her. We loved her spirit of play and lack of self-consciousness. Elena tells the story that after dinner on the Malibu Pier that summer when she was here, there were a number of poets had gathered, and Elena said, "Fiona hugged me in the parking lot, and when at one point I relaxed to pull away, she hugged me harder and said, 'Deal with it.'" She was delightfully cheeky and yet so present in her being. Elena said that when she thinks of Fiona, she recalls a quote from the artist Anne Hamilton, who said, "Poetry is an act of translation, and translation is an act of empathy." There's that tuning fork again, that deep empathy. I met Fiona virtually just before COVID. We were both taking a course of ecstatic poetry at the Poetry School online, and we immediately were struck by the spiritual nature of the poems we were sharing. I felt the pull to reach out to her in the real world. Anyone who knows Fiona knows that once she's in, she's all in. I loved her wit and confidence and admired all she was doing with the poetry exchange and with her own poetry. But it was a feeling that I could be with someone and share my most vulnerable self within the deep care Fiona offered, which was and continues to be a lifeline. Despite Fiona's awards and accomplishments, she remained humble about her own work and grateful for any opportunities to share it. I saw in her a balance of ego and selflessness. She was one of the only people I could ever be in silence with for any length of time and not feel compelled to break it. As interviewers, we both understood the value of being fully present. It was a gift. It was like a meditation. Fiona leaves behind her tremendous legacy as a poet and interdisciplinary artist, and her extensive background in theater, as well as her co-leadership of the MAP Consortium, an exceptional arts-based training company. She designed and delivered artful interventions in a wide range of organizations and settings across the world, including Shakespeare's Globe, the Royal National Theatre, Setagaya Theatre Tokyo, British Council Mumbai, and the European Dance Network. Some of you also know of her creation and formation of the Poetry Exchange, which she founded in 2014 and co-hosted. It's still happening now. They're airing earlier episodes of the podcast with Fiona and Michael, and it still has a future. Co-hosted with wonderful actor Michael Schaefer, inviting individuals to explore a poem that's been a friend to them. Their collaboration, along with creative producer John Preble, has brought forth a decade to quote Fiona, of profound connections that exist between readers and poems and the power of poetry in people's lives. Of all the things I know and many that I've learned since she left us so suddenly last year, what stands out for me is her bravery and her tremendous joie de vivre that she retained even until her last days. It's important to say that when she learned that there would be no cure for her diagnosis, her words were, "I want to do this right." And she did do it, so right. Handled her responsibilities, her family, and Fiona was even able to work with Tamar Burke, who was co-editing her manuscript On the Brink of Touch, alongside Glenn Maxwell, which Live Canon was able to release in late 2024. Touch and gesture were such a huge part of her presence. The gesture in all its manifest ways, including how she empowered others with her love and care. I came across a beautiful quote that I wish I could have shared with her. R.P. Blackmer said, "We feel almost everything that stirs us as if it were a gesture, the gesture of our uncreated selves." Whether you knew Fiona briefly or for many years, we know it's never the length of time, but the depth of the exchange. Fiona gave that depth to everyone she encountered. So I'd like to next share a video from Melissa Studdard, who couldn't be with us today, but it was her video tribute to Fiona, whom she adored. We had all spent some time up in Big Bear doing a workshop in Elena's cabins and had a lot of fun hiking and laughing and cooking and responding to poetry prompts and really connecting at the root. So let's hear it from Melissa.
Hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with you today to celebrate Fiona and her life, her words, her uncontainable spirit. We all knew her in that way, and we knew that she was just one of these rare souls who's just absolutely lit from within. You can walk into a room full of people and see that glowing orb in the center, and that was Fiona. And she was vibrant, she was zany, she was full of life, just an absolutely extraordinary, beautiful poet and human being. And I want to tell you a story that sort of captures her spirit, which is the first time I met her. And I had just pulled up to Elena Karina Byrne's house and in my car, and I heard someone up from the balcony yelling, "Welcome, poet, beautiful poet." I mean, and this is someone who has never seen me before and only knows I'm a poet and is calling out, "Beautiful poet." And it turns out that she was so excited to meet a new poet that she had actually run out onto Elena's patio completely naked. And just, no hesitation, no self-consciousness, just like pure, joyful Fiona energy, greeting me with her whole being. And she just didn't hold back. She just met life, she met people, she met love, she met poetry, she met everything with her full presence, her full heart, her full energy. And it was a model on how to be, how I wish we all could be. How I want to be, how I would be as my absolute best self. When I think of that, I think of Fiona. Like, why can't I be more like Fiona? Oh, God, I miss her so much. Okay, so I'm going to share a couple of poems with you that I love of Fiona's. And I hope that as you listen to these, you can hear not just the poems, not just the words of the poems, but her warmth, her wildness, her spirit. So the first one is called Emily Dickinson's Corset and Her White Gown. Vessel of cloth and bone, turned in on itself, mouth wide open, cradle to carry her birth cry, to rock her dreams, ribbed wing narrowed, focused to a point, breath as microscope, lotus hands to catch butterfly, beetle, snail, small, dead things, worn in the day, laid down at night, when the white dress let loose the strings and unbound, spectre-free, murmuring, she empties her specimens, ink to the page. So the next poem feels to me so much like an offering and a way to hold someone close, even in their absence. It's in memory of her father, Michael J. Bennett, and it's called Viewpoint on the River Dee. And I kind of like the idea of holding her in this space in the same way that she held her father in this space. I come when the edge of darkness returns you to me. The water is swollen above the weir before it breaks into a gush of white foam. The heron stands poised, fixing the moment. I remember your hands, the tension in your forearms, forcing them steady as you held them up in a square for the view you never came back to paint. I look into your scene, the arc of the bridge, lamp posts, the curved row of houses lining the hill, winter trees, all reveal themselves to me now as a complex web of thin black lines, like an X-ray held to the light, the challenge of perspective that ruled your life. So it feels like saying goodbye in this moment in a way to turn it over to someone else, which is hard to do. But I hand Fiona and her words over to the next reader. I hope that we also carry her spirit with us, the fearlessness, the joy, the wild, wild generosity, her shimmering soulfulness. And I hope that in memory of her, we can all greet the world a little more openly, run out onto the patio, naked or not, when someone we love shows up, and remember that Fiona's light doesn't go out. It moves in us in these poems, in our love for each other, and our love for her. And I just want to say thank you for all being here, for making this happen, for sharing her words. And I can't wait to hear everybody else's readings.
Thank you. Could you all hear her okay? Could he make it a little bit louder, please? Thank you so much. Okay, so next up we have Beth Ruscio. Already, she'll be reading from On the Brink of Touch. I'm reading.
What did I miss? I'm reading from what?
You're reading your poem. This is from
I'm reading
here.
her poem. Yeah. I just want to say that I met Fiona in this room, and she was fully clothed, but she had just read a poem about her collaboration with a dance troupe, and it was all full of, even as you were saying, gesture. And I just thought, I wonder if she knows the work of Anne Bogart. So I went up to her and I said, I'm so taken with that poem that you read, working with a choreographer. Do you know the work of Anne Bogart and the book, The Viewpoints? And she said, she pointed to her bag and she said, "It's in my bag." So I said, oh, we're going to be friends. And we became pen pals across the ocean. We shared poems every Monday. We missed a few Mondays, and sometimes it was Tuesday, but it was wonderful. We were fellow theater rats. She was also from the theater. And there was a project that we both had, which was to find a way to adapt these theatrical principles called the viewpoints to poetry, because they're actually called composition, the viewpoints. So I actually feel it's incumbent on me to carry on the work that the two of us talked about over the last couple of years. And now, here is this poem of hers, this wonderful poem of hers, which is about, I did a deep dive on this actor. His name is Ira Aldrich. He was he was born in New York, but he settled in London, and he became one of the leading Shakespearean actors in Britain. He was born in 1807, and he emigrated to England, and he played Othello when he was 17 years old, and a portrait was painted of him by John Northcote. And this poem of Fiona's is an ekphrastic take. There's a way in which she is she's describing how the painting has worked on her. In Defiance of Tragedy, which is a great title. 1. A Moor Portrait by John Northcote, 1826. His torso wrapped in a sheen of white silk, pleated into a sash of burnt orange, his crown of black curls silhouetted in silver light. Close up, your eyes meet, or rather they don't, because this noble sitter, his torso facing toward you, is looking away. Dark pupils cornered, his attention contorted between you, his viewer, and some other threat beyond the frame. 2. Othello by William Shakespeare, The Royalty Theatre, London, 1825. After Desdemona, take my hand, his black palm opening to her white, captured by the wing light, after his body lithe, racked with anguish, his voice sonorous, then sweet as a child's, after the audience rose to their feet and the critics skulked and fled, the crowd called for more, he parted the curtain, and instead of the habitual jig, the closing farce, held back the applause, addressed them in his own voice. I risk my all upon thy power, life, son, yea, country too, to free my brethren, fettered slaves, from sinking in inglorious graves. 3. Ira Aldrich. In his dressing room, cleansing the coal lines of rage and torment from his strong brow. The story dissolves in his fingers. His eyes look back at him, cold presence of self unmasked. A man, like any other, facing into the glass. That's Fiona. Do you want me to introduce anybody else? Andrea Witzke S-L-O-T, Slot. Her very good friend. And her tribute is coming up next on the screen.
I just wanted to say hello and record this for the event today. I should be in LA right now, but my father is in ICU and I'm in Texas. I was here for his birthday, which some of you know, and instead of having the birthday celebration, we ended up in the hospital, an urgent care unit for most of the day, and then he was transferred to the hospital, admitted to ICU at about midnight, just after midnight. So I'm here right now, and I just am so pleased that there are people gathering right now to celebrate Fiona and her work and her life. She would have loved that. If there's one thing that's certain in life, it's that it's very unpredictable and that we must embrace our loved ones and those we care about daily. And Fiona was so good at doing that, and she kind of taught us all of that too in her everyday life. I remember so well being warmly welcomed to LA back in July 2023. Lois and Elena and Melissa and another Elena and Susan too, and many other poets who we met at the time were so welcoming, and they did make us feel, Fiona and I both, almost giddy with joy, as Melissa's story and her reading illustrates so well. I remember that moment. We were upstairs at Elena's house, and Elena Karina Byrne, and we were getting ready for the day, and I think she heard the car pull up and was just getting ready in the bathroom, and she went out to the balcony to catch her first glimpse of beautiful Melissa, and obviously Melissa got her first glimpse of Fiona. It's such a lovely story, and there's so many stories of connection. So many stories of connection, and the one that Fiona gave us. I have 25 copies of Fiona's lovely book given to me straight from the hands of her publisher, Helen Eastman at Live Canon, and they're in my suitcase and they're here in Texas. But what is so amazing is the whole story about how that collection came to be. It really was a sort of group effort by Glenn Maxwell and Tammy Yusuleff, her MA tutors, Fiona's MA tutors, and then Helen, and they made it possible for Fiona to know that her work would be published in book form, and that just overjoyed her. And then miraculously, of course, Helen had the book ready, a beautiful book ready in time for the memorial. And then the memorial was followed by a book launch, which Glenn and Tammy and Helen and John Preble all organized and gathered all of Fiona's MA cohorts and people from the Poetry Exchange and from the map that she also created, and just so many people, and her family, many of her family members there, and her MA cohort itself, all reading poems of hers. And I just think that says so much about Fiona. That one book, sort of gathering the energy of so many people, and continuing to do that today, there in LA, and all those people gathered and reading her work, listening to her work, meeting each other. There's something very lovely about that. And if there's anything that story teaches us about, or tells us about Fiona, and is that she lived connection. She just lived this way of being present with people and connecting up the people that she loved. Those connections were everywhere. I first met her in Wellfleet, Cape Cod, at a Marge Piercy workshop with all the other lovely Wellfleet poets, back in 2010. And then, of course, there's the Poetry Exchange, full of connections, not only the initial connection between her and Michael Schaefer, who created it, and sort of grew it organically, and it became, over the years, what it is now. And then all the contributing artists and the, my fellow trustees, Allison and Roy, and then there's our beloved Muse Club, and all of this was just rising out of the Poetry Exchange itself. And then there are the other connections that she had that I just caught a glimpse of, the map, and she created with Chris, her partner, and at the map, and her life in Chester with her partner Tim, and then her life in London with her beautiful mother Diana, who just had a birthday a couple of days ago too, and her brother and her sister and their families. There's just connections everywhere, and those connections continue to grow, and even beyond, her presence here. And then there's these final connections, well, not final, but these connections we made here with all of these LA poets. And yeah, Fiona and I took their energy home, and it truly was a journey through California. We did it, a couple of days of driving off places, and we were up in Big Bear, with the generosity of Lois and Elena, and yeah, it was incredible. So many new connections. What I'm going to do is read one of her poems, read two of her poems. I'm going to read one called Holding the Mirror. And this is a poem that says so much about Fiona. I tried very hard to find some green space near the hospital, and I was sitting out there for a little while, but it was incredibly hot here in Texas, and I didn't last very long. Plus, it's quite noisy out there, so I'm just in the car with a little bit of air conditioning. I'll read this one first. This is called Holding the Mirror. And the epigraph is, "No human eye can meet the Buddhas." And that's Michael Adotji's, it's from Michael Adotji's Anil's Ghost, that book. Holding the Mirror. Imagine the stone-carved Buddha still and alone in the woods. From a distance, we are insects at the foot of its infinite ladder. I am papoosed to your side as we begin the climb, scale the folds of his robe, the curve of his belly. The air thins as we reach the trunk of his neck. We do not look up into we do not look up into the moon of his face. Below, paddy fields patchwork the valley, stitch the earth with their watery harvest. I hold the mirror up, its line of sight angled over your shoulder, reflecting the great blank oval. His empty eye, awaiting your color. I pass the brush, nestle into your neck, until the unspoken truth of you, the bottle green hue of your darkness, wets the stone, his sight alive in the line of your stroke. I'm going to read just one poem of mine, and it's not in either of my collections. It's a poem that I wrote on the way back from seeing Fiona for a weekend in Chester back in, well, it was this month actually, it was the end of May last year, and we didn't know yet what the diagnosis was. But when I arrived, and I was there for a couple of days and just helping to change her sheets and look after her, and we still had a laugh, and we got a cry, but the news she had to tell me as I arrived, she didn't know anything for certain, but her gut was telling her something. And I'll read this one. It's not something really that I've shared at all, so it's called The Graying. I hope I can get through it. The Graying. The Graying. My friend, I knew you as electric shades of red. An oceanside drives of blue, California coast and lapis lazuli, clouds and Mediterranean blue. What happened to the sky that day my train sped to Chester? Rain-smeared window, gunmetal mist, an unwrapped sandwich on my lap. You said it would take a long time to reach the door. I waited patiently, stepped inside, daylight dropping to stones. The mosaic tiles darker than I remember. You asked me to sit beside you in the front room. Bob Dylan's smoky evening cafe, midnight above your fireplace, because, you told me, words had failed him too. You reached for my hand, and each quiet word was a cloth rubbing the still wet paint on the ceiling above, hitting the dyed surface of walls, snap upon snap, smearing the stars into the streets, the streets into the earth, the earth into dark ponds. No moon. Sorry. It's just everything else, I think, going on. Okay. You reached for my hand, and each quiet word was a cloth rubbing the still wet paint on the ceiling above, hitting the dyed surface of walls, snap upon snap, smearing the stars into the streets into the earth into dark ponds. No moon, no snow, no summer, no spring, just winter's muted slate, midnight asleep in the late afternoon of goodbye. Please draw the curtains, darling, you said as you lifted yourself, moved to the kitchen, looked out over the darkening of garden leaves. Please draw the curtains. Okay, now I will end with one of her poems. I'll just take a breath for a minute. Just going to pause for 1 second. You can see the trees. There's actually even a pond over there with some birds. And actually, there were some lovely sounds of birds, and then this huge helicopter came flying over and landed. I think they must have been, yes, bringing someone to the hospital who needed emergency care. Anyway, okay, so now I'm going to read the last one of Fiona's. And actually, before I read it, as I think it will be the last thing I read, are her words, I do have, as I say, 25 books of hers in my suitcase, and if you would like a copy, just email me. If you'd like to buy a copy from me, I think it's probably the easiest way right now. I know Helen's working on finding a way to have the books available here too, because no doubt they're going to be wanted all over the world. Anyway, I'm happy to I could sell you a copy and mail it to you free of charge while I'm still here in the U.S. I don't know when I'm going to go back to London. I haven't figured that out yet. So, but anyway, love and light and luminosity to all of you, and keep those connections strong. And I'm just sending love and light to each and every one of you who's out there listening, and hold your loved ones close. And yes, we never know what tomorrow brings, do we? Okay, this is a little tiny poem, so powerful. This is Fiona's, and when I was at her house, every morning, as many of you probably know, she'd get up and sit in her yellow chair in her bedroom, which overlooked the back garden, which was so beautifully put together by Fiona and her mother. One of my favorite plants out there was a Japanese maple, so I was always looking forward to seeing how it grew. And it was, anyway, she looked over that, and she sat in the yellow chair. So when I read this poem, I see her there in that chair. When they leave us, an empty chair no longer waits. Light from the window does not stir us, belongs to another world. The shadow of a moth's wing is a soul's murmur, caught between curtain and glass.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Oh, my goodness. So beautiful, intense, and true, and real. One thing I wanted to say, when I met Andrea, I just met her at first on Zoom during COVID. And when Elena and I were coming to England in 2022, she just said, come on, stay with us. She'd never met us. She'd never met Elena. She said, I have room in my house. And that's the kind of generosity of spirit that she had and she has. And that's, part of that continuum that continues on with Elena. And just welcoming people, welcoming them, because you don't know what those connections are going to be and how meaningful they are in your life. So, okay. Our next reader is Elena Sakota. There she is. And after Elena, Susan Rogers.
Yes, I first met Fiona at Elena's compound in Big Bear. And I remember the strong hug and the strong handshake. And we just felt connected immediately through our theater days and living in London. And this is from her collection on the Ring of Touch. Slipping the mooring. Running down the hill towards the quay, hand in hand like children, they play the game again. Who would see her first? Vessel that had made the dream real. Hull, deck, mast and sail. Just grace. They stammered to a stop in unison. The clink of the lines making the emptiness of where she should have been one long, resounding hollow. A single gull flew over the bay out to sea, where the whole planet of the love slowly dipped away over the horizon.
So I'm really moved by everything I've heard here, but I especially wanted to thank Andrea for, if you're listening, Andrea, for what you shared. One of my favorite photos of you, of Fiona, is the photo of the two of you, arm in arm. We had a couple of us poets had been at the Malibu farm, and you just were so full of life. The fresh ocean air, the jubilance was in both of you, and there was so much light and presence. I just treasure seeing that, and it was so full of life. I cannot but think that that still is there. Anyway, I also met both of you for the first time at the Big Bear location, and what I remember about Fiona that stood out for me, a couple of things, was that the time she had a hurt arm, a hurt wing, and I think we can kind of maybe see, this looks like Big Bear, I don't know if it is, but it reminds me, she was wearing some sort of a sling, and I do a form of healing light energy, and I remember I was offering her, and she was so gracious about that, but ultimately what I felt was that I was receiving light from her. I was receiving so much light because she could not help but emit that radiance. And my second memory from that Big Bear time, I had many, but that really stands out is July 4th, because we were there around the holiday, and I remember the fireworks were about to happen, and we were all running through the grass, in the dark to try to get to the fireworks, and I just saw them start to go off, but they were reflected in Fiona's eyes, and they were just like stars and like fireflies. So anyway, I'm reading a poem that I had to look up too, because it's dedicated to, as they were saying about Fiona, she's very eclectic in multimedia. It's dedicated to someone I had not heard of before, whose name is William Tuckett. You may know. He's a British choreographer from Birmingham, and he was known for very special ballets, but a very, I guess, acclaimed ballet was one called La Jolie Sky. So this is La Jolie Sky, Fiona's poem. He is dreamt while waking from a walled garden, looked up, and the whole canopy of blue, full sail and beckoning. He has seen them leaping in swallow dives, lark rise, the dancers, airborne. Then rooted horses gathering, banking the field, cantering at the boundary. Their numbers increasing, he draws it all in on his breath, on his heartbeat. In the studio, the dancers move in front of the mirrors. Time was, time is, within and beyond them. There is the count, a hushed metronome, they whisper, and there is the air yielding, the earth rolling beneath them. He walks in, and the room is water. He is current and tide, moon drawing their rise, and all he has dreamed is in them, is of them. They turn, shoulders leaning into it, break in diagonal waves, arms wide, chests open, their faces lifted up to his leisurely sky. Thank you, Fiona. So I'd like to introduce the treat of a lifetime. I've never seen anything like this, and I'm going to hold this forever in my heart. The most beautiful thing I think I've seen in as long as I can remember, and I'm not exaggerating. This is a film poem that was shot, directed by, was it Janet Leese, and narrated by Lois P. Jones, of Fiona's poem, The Light You Left Behind.
After you left, I stood on the porch staring out, a thick darkness slowly forming above the lake. The curve of the shore, whose intricacies I had traced only minutes earlier. The woods, with a face full of expressions that had held my gaze the long afternoon. Like your presence, these friends slowly extinguishing. Long shot. Fade to black. Heavy and full, I breathed in, willing my eyes to hold on to things, and in that instant, a tiny orange light, like a single ash blown from the fire, pierced the dense night. I blinked. It winked. Then again, and then another, and another, and another. I began to count. I lost count. They came like the small, bright miracles of thought that flash through each and every one of you. They were my first fireflies. Children here run out into the garden to catch them in jam jars. The field guide says they are the product of excess oxygen, stimulated, if the theorists are correct, by the need to reproduce. The light you give cannot be caught in a jam jar or put down to procreation, but it will cause wonder. It will ignite change. Where I come from, there are no fireflies. Send me your words. Send me your flame.
house and it sure looks bad. They won't give peace a chance. That was just a dream some of us had. Still a lot of lands to see, but I wouldn't want to stay here. It's too old and cold and settled in its ways here. Oh, but California, California, coming home. I'm gonna see the folks I dig. I'll even kiss a sunset pig. California, I'm coming home. I met a redneck on a Grecian Isle who did the goat dance very well. He gave me back my smile, but he kept my camera in a cell. Oh, the rogue, the red rogue. He cooked good omelets and stews, and I might have stayed on with him there, but my heart cried out for you. California, oh, California, coming home. Oh, make me feel good, rock and roll band. I'm your biggest fan. California, I'm coming home. Oh, it gets so lonely when you're walking and the streets are full of strangers. All the news on you read just give you the blues. Just give you the blues. So I bought me a ticket, I caught a plane to Spain. Went to a party down a red dirt road. There were lots of pretty people there, reading Rolling Stone, reading Vogue. They said, how long can you hang around? I said, a week, maybe two, just until my skin turns brown. And I'm going home to California. California, I'm coming home. Oh, will you take me as I am, strung out on another man? California, I'm coming home. Oh, it gets so lonely when you're walking and the streets are full of strangers. All the news at home you read more about the war and the bloody changes. Oh, will you take me as I am? Will you take me as I am? Will you take me as I am? Take me as I They paved paradise, put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hot spot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They took all the trees, put them in a tree museum. And they charged the people $1.50 just to see 'em. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Hey, farmer, farmer, put away the DDT now. Give me spots on my apples, or leave me the birds and the bees. Please, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what what you've got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Late last night, I heard the screen door slam, and a big yellow taxi took away my old man. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. I said, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds.
Hi, guys. So we're getting ready to start back here in a minute. It's not recording now, so yeah. But I want to just get everybody ready because we had our break and there are some people watching, so they want to know what's happening in part 2. You can tell them. And Suzanne, you're going to be the first up. Okay. Yeah, Suzanne is first up. Mandy is second. Judith is third. J. Michael is fourth. And then we were bringing back up 3 of the readers who'd read before. Beth, Susan, and Elena. And I may read one poem. So, okay. I can't see you, so I can't signal you. Okay. I'm ready, yeah. Hi, we're back again in part 2, and we have a few more readers to share their work with you. I wanted to just make an after comment about Janet Leigh's achingly beautiful poem. As I was talking about during the break, I had approached Janet about doing this particular poem as a film poem, and I wanted to exchange with her for it, and she just wouldn't have it. You know, she knew I'd lost my sister last year, and she'd lost her own sister, and so the energy of that film, the light in that film, is Fiona, but it's all of us. You know, it's all of us, the loss and also the life that continues on. And Janet just did such an exquisite job. So our next reader is the wonderful literary legend, Suzanne Lummis.
Well, of the many things that Lois has brought to Los Angeles and poets of Los Angeles, artists of Los Angeles, she's introduced many of us to Fiona, yet another gift. And it was back in 2023. I'd forgotten what year it is. It all blends together in my memory at this age. But somebody here reminded me it was 2023 and your birthday, when you had the most exotic birthday event I've ever gone to. If I lived in high society, which I don't, instead of, I live in low society, but a rich person could not have thrown a more beautiful party. And Fiona was there, and I was sitting next to Fiona, and Fiona and I met each other. And guess where we were? We were on the wharf in Malibu, right? Who is in Malibu? Lois is the only person who gets me to drive to Malibu. So then I get to see Malibu. Oh, the Malibu I've always seen in the movies. This is it. And overlooking the waters, and we had delectable food. And it was the California dream and the Los Angeles dream epitomized. And when Fiona and I started talking, I had the same experience with her that so many other people here have had, that it was instant friendship. Every once in a while, doesn't happen often, you meet somebody, and as soon as you start talking, it's like you've known each other for years. It's like you go way back. There's no sort of slow breaking in and sort of feeling each other out and figuring out who you both are, that kind of thing. And I loved the woman, and Lois says she remembers me. What should I say? She didn't forget me anyway. And I thought what's jarring to me is that sometimes you meet somebody and you go, this person's going to be in my life forever. We're best friends from here on out, even though there's a couple oceans between us or something. And then she was snatched away from all of us. As I said to Lois via email earlier, I feel sad that this sudden new friend suddenly became one of the bygone, as I say. And some days people will say of me, don't say she passed when it comes to me. Just say, oh yeah, Lummis, yeah, she's one of the bygone. I like that term right now. And so I have a poem for her. And this is my reason for reading this particular poem, which was written in the first person. And I am going to switch it to second person singular. and I'm going to say it to Fiona. And Lois gave Fiona one of the most beautiful, loveliest, dreamlike parts of Southern California and Los Angeles. You gave that to Fiona. You gave her that experience. So she had that in her life. Well, I can't give anybody Malibu or any nice place really west of La Brea. For 15 years, I lived in what finally turned into a tenement. Maybe it all went to hell when I moved in. I don't know. It wasn't so bad at the beginning, and then it really went downhill. South of Sunset and East Hollywood. When I came to LA, when I moved to LA, all I was set on is I want my address to say Hollywood. It has to say Hollywood. Because I intended to move to Hollywood, but I didn't understand the difference between regular Hollywood, West Hollywood, and East Hollywood, and also the difference between south of Sunset and north of Sunset. So I had a dream while I was living in my tenement apartment, which had now turned into a Section 8 housing. And in this dream, my neighborhood and my tenement, which was right above a donut inn that was open 24 hours, I could get a donut in. I loved that about this place. I could walk downstairs and get a donut at 3:30 a.m. But it was transformed into this dreamlike, enchanted landscape. And I dreamed the opening line, which you will hear in a moment. And so this transformed and enchanted area of East Hollywood is what I would like to give to Fiona in its magical state. It has an epigraph. The epigraph is from Dorothy Barisi and her poem of hers called Wells After Cain. By the way, are you hearing me okay? Good. That's good. Good sign you're not deaf like I am getting. And I can't hear very much anymore. All right. And the quote is about Orson Welles. The movie in his head is perfect. And the title of this little poem is The City in My Head is Perfect for Fiona. At the Donut Inn, all the men are in love. Women, more enchanting than ever and evermore, wander the empty lots, calling like low swinging bells. Yet you are the object of this love and the destination saint of the freeway streets. This avenue buses float down with their cargoes of light. Although some of these men you have seen, now they seem more than they were. They burn with something you want. Who cares what anyone thinks? The roar of traffic dispels its blessing everywhere. Wave over wave like this. Yes, almost like this. Almost like the sea.
I am so grateful that I got to meet Fiona. what an indelible and unforgettable presence. I'm so grateful I got to hear so many of her poems today and feel moved again and again by her. And it's hard. I wish I could have heard them, in her voice too. And I'm very moved by all of this, and it's hard to live through a time of loss, and it's hard to lose someone that has so much light in every part of their presence. So my personal practice is I just lean on the presence of the divine, even when something doesn't make sense to my mind. I just let myself, I guess, just be in witness of the fact that there is divinity, even if I don't understand what's happening. So this poem is about an experience of the divine. I was getting out of the shower one day in an unfamiliar bathroom in an unfamiliar house, and the shower door just so happened to encounter the light. The light passed through it, and a rainbow line happened on the bathroom wall. That's where this poem came from. Rainbow line. Not an arc above a misty glade, not between two cliffs, not through waterfall, but here on this peeling bathroom wall, one solid rainbow line, straight as new lead pipe. From the man-made shower door, sharp as the tools that cut glass, not a human finger, but an even strip, a ruler's edge of God. As if he's saying, I'll use any door. Yes, I am a parent in the wet glens, curving over daffodils, decorating streams. Also on the workbench with exposed bolts, also in the foundry, also on the wrench. Any glass you've made and cut can show me. Any light contains me. Any wall might host. Manufacture, slice, a prism finds you. Even sand with heat is glass. I love every room. Thank you.
I said to Lois, I don't even need to read a poem. I'm so happy to be here. I didn't know Fiona, but now I feel I do know Fiona. And just to have received her poetry and then that exquisite video with the reading that you did, it could have been, I suppose, any voice, but it was so, that voice knew her. That was yours, Lois. It was seamless. I mean, it was just one of the beautiful moments. I don't know, and I could have used it. It has not been an easy time for any of us right now, I know that. I'm just going to read one very short poem. It's an Ars Poetica, and I think Fiona, who I didn't have the pleasure of knowing, would enjoy it. I hope she would. Untied. Scraps collected and saved and shaped to stanzas or laid out with care on paper, like starched and ironed organza, crushed. Oh, those crumpled hours, torn and tossed away. Something might be there. And then Once when I was 3, I tried to tie my shoe, hurled it flying fury against the flowered wallpaper, making bruises of purple-petaled flowers. Not so much later, I came to know the shoe's lace better. It's loop the loop. It's up, round, down. And then the lace and I became a bow. Thank you for today.
Hello, can you hear me okay? So most of my poetry comes from walking in the woods. We're blessed in Northeast LA that we have Deb's Park behind us. And I like to go up there before dawn. When your senses are on high alert, you're able to take in how every moving around walkway, the air smells just a little bit different. And I gather my recollections of what I experienced and want to write them down. And I guess because everything is so intense, then it comes out as poetry. So the poems don't have titles. So we begin. The drakes glide in quiet as a pair of Priuses and break lush on the water like satin. A murder of crows, big as owls, their brackish chatter, rude and reedy, consumes the bare uprights of a dying tree. The old goose snores on. A lost in thought coyote, no thicker than a tomcat, trots this away, then afterthoughts sharp into the brush below. At the pathway's far edge, a crossroad amid browning weeds, a rabbit, unprotected, ventures onto the asphalt to nibble a lone eruption of greenery. A melon cloud tilts in dawn's aqua sky, while to the west, last night's cool fog languors on, her long, wispy legs stretched out, caressing Mount Washington.
Thank you, J. Michael. Thank you. We have 3 more readers, and Beth, you're up next.
I'm mixing it up. This is a poem that Fiona loved. I sent her this poem one Monday, and so I'm reading it to her. It's about a loss of my own, but we both commiserated over mutual losses. It's called Rest My Eyes. Before this day, which begins upside down at 12:30 p.m., writing as I do, past 4, past 5, the night chased away, and sleep once it's light outside. Grape nuts at lunchtime. Friday, the day I have to face it. Teeth need fixing on both sides now. Rosie at Dr. Waterman's says it's all those masks and the gnashing. Sweating in the freezer section, basket so full it might break. Heart racing, Forgot my morning beta blocker, us and our hearts. Chew a chalky aspirin at checkout. Leon eats leftovers, pork tenderloin, caramelized onion, roasted Yukon Golds, and cherries on ice in their own bowl because, I'd tell you, their season is short. Live it up. Tom waits on Spotify as I wipe down the counter. The evening fell just like a star and left a trail behind. You spit as you slammed out the door. As my college roommate used to say, you want to listen to Tom Waits or you want a handful of downs? Leanne and I walk, and on our way see two empty brown leather shoes, the right shoe one pace ahead of the left. Look, someone's been raptured. 6:30 news, and I braid my long pandemic hair longer than I wore it as a kid, white at the roots, then gray, then chestnut. They pull a Palestinian girl, maybe she's 9, from the blasted ruins, the broken, the sewers, and shit-strewn streets of the West Bank. And this girl, caked in plaster dust, her body slack. Then she blinks. Cheers drown out her crying. What there is to live for, I'd try to tell you, but only fail. And who am I to know which of us survives the worst? Because you'd be 28 this year, and when I rest my eyes in the early light, it stings.
See if I can arrange this. So I'd like to read a poem from Grateful Conversations, which has my poetry as well as Lois's poetry in it. And the poem was also reprinted in Kyoto Journal thanks to Lois, who's the poetry editor. I chose this poem this morning, but it's about Japanese maples, which turn to the color of fire in autumn. But having heard Andrea talk about the Japanese maples in Fiona's backyard, I feel there's no accident. So this poem is for Fiona and Andrea. And I read it as written with one addition, which you'll notice at the end. It's called Longing for October. I looked for you among leaves so full of color, they burst like cherry flames singing of sap. I looked for you in the blood of autumn, trees warmed by sunfire, spinning in the pulse of maple and beech, anthocyanin, sugaring green veins as spring sugars the sky with sakura. I looked for you in the chill of autumn, mountains filling the sweep of space with strokes of brilliance, knowing it is both fire and frost that paints the tree, knowing every love turns to deeper shades of longing as it rises into fullness. You are wind and water, moving across the face of leaves. You are the invisible made visible, Fiona. Sap rising until it explodes in a symphony of light everywhere I look in the canopy.
So I composed this canto from Fiona's In the Light of Touch, in the brink of touch. Inside us, willowed tissue floats and twists. Blood pounds over the distance along the web of tributaries. Under the clock at Waterloo Station, she raised her arm to greet him. On the rise of the bridge, 2 figures pause. Each night, 60 beeswax candles tremble and burn in the iron chandeliers. Your hand arrived in mine. The heat of you flooded into me. Thank you.
Wow, that was a beautiful program. Thank you so much, everyone. I was going to read a poem, but I'm not. It's been too much. It's been too full, too rich, and we have everything we need. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Elena Karina Byrne, who's with us somewhere, hopefully watching. And thank you again to Chloe and Andrew for making this space for us. Yay! Thank you.